All right, guys, so I just wanted to make this video. I kind of questioned at first whether or not I should make a video like this because all my videos are all, nice, and I make the artwork and I make the titles look nice and everything like that. But when it comes to value, I need to prioritize value over aesthetic and kind of the marketing of the channel, because at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. What matters is, am I bringing value to my community? And one of the things that I've really been thinking through now that we're on like video 70 plus on the channel is a lot of times a viewer will ask a question in the comment section that honestly is such a good question. I feel like just answering them in the comment section alone doesn't really do justice to the fact of bringing you guys value, because really I should be answering some of those questions live on a video so that we can get maximum exposure, and people who have similar questions to people in the comments can actually get some great answers and some great feedback in terms of the conversation of fragrance. And so one of the things a viewer recently asked me about was, after seeing the Afnan 9 p.m. video, he said basically he's either 40 years old or pushing 40 and would like to know, hey, can a guy like me still rock Afnan 9 p.m.? So let me just grab that fragrance real quick. This is what you need to know about Afnan, and I've talked about it in the video, but I just want to re-clarify. This is supposed to be a smoother rendition of Ultra Male. Now, we know Jean Paul Gaultier fragrances in general are sweet. Coconutty, sweet, vanilla, tropical, that whole vibe. So the first thing you have to ask yourself when it comes to these fragrances is, do you like tropical? Do you like sweet? And how sweet are you willing to go? Because I think in terms of the sweetness meter, this leans on very sweet. And the older you get as a male, I think the more you like your sweetness less sugary and more sophisticated and classy, or just subdued and blended better with the rest of the ingredients. I find that younger males typically love blasts of sweetness in a fragrance, not necessarily fruity, but even more on the sugary side. That's not the case for all men. So you need to first and foremost determine, are you the type of guy who leans towards any type of sweet fragrances? And do you understand what you're getting yourself into? Have you smelled a Jean Paul Gaultier fragrance? And are you familiar with that DNA style? Because if you're not, and you don't generally lean towards sweet fragrances, you're in for a rude awakening just blind buying a fragrance like Afnan 9 p.m., though it is smoother than the Ultra Male. Now, another thing I will say, again, so you want to rule out, are you open to sweeter fragrances? I say sweeter because if you just say sweet, that doesn't really that doesn't really set the palette for the fact that this fragrance is above average in its sweetness. So if you're open to it, you most certainly can attempt to rock this at older ages. And again, this is just in my humble opinion. It is a very versatile fragrance, but the older you get, I think you do have to relax on the trigger finger here. And, I might only hit myself twice. That's 2 sprays with a fragrance like this, because I'm pushing 40 myself. You know what I'm saying? I'm 35. I'm about to be 36. So I don't want to be smelling overly sweet. And even though I like a profile like this, I don't want to come off very strongly with a fragrance like this. So I would chill on the trigger finger. Whereas if you're a young guy in your 20s or under, you might hit yourself 4 to 6 times with this. You want to exude that sweet, coconutty, vanilla-y type of vibe. But the older I get, I find it's very off-putting to females to smell overly sweet, almost borderline gourmand, not quite. But I do want to offer a tip. Budget plays into this a lot, because on the TikTok shop, I was able to snag up this fragrance for like $17. For $17 for a fragrance this good, even if it's going to sit on my shelf for a long time and I only bust it out on colder weather and hit myself with like 2 sprays, that to me is still like, okay, I'll drop the 17 bucks on it. But if you're penny pinching, I do think, if I'm being like overly technical and aggressive on price being a factor, then I want to recommend to you guys a couple of other options. So the reason I think a fragrance like Afnan 9 p.m. is not the best option for men 30 and up is because it has sophistication in its sweetness, But sweetness is the predominant feature of the fragrance. It doesn't really go anywhere else. It's just kind of like a bunch of sweet and smooth nuance. And there's nothing really earthy or just a different note DNA that comes behind it and gives it some mature backbone. A lot of times when you see like vetiver or an earthy note or a water note, mineral note, I'm trying to look at some of these fragrances, spice as a note, they give maturity to a fragrance that make them more ageless, where they kind of sit on a balance beam of sophistication and take you, kind of blend two worlds together in terms of age and modernness and sophistication. So I'll give you a great example of some alternatives that I think, if you're on the fence about being too old, too mature for a fragrance like Afnan 9 p.m., which leans youthful, not necessarily teeny bop, but, definitely 30 below. Here's some great alternatives. We have our Fragheads Asylum Extrait to Parfum from FOMO, which is cloning Elysium. Elysium is a nice tropical, let me not say tropical, citrusy, floral, sophisticated fragrance, but it's sophisticated by that backbone of vetiver. Had it not had vetiver in it, it would lean more youthful, 30 and below. The Elysium DNA is extremely versatile, but the fact that they put the vetiver in there allows it for older folks to be able to, I feel, rock this very confidently as a mature signature fragrance. So in the citrus, floral, with mature bite, this is a great alternative for someone who's in their 30s and 40s. This one's taking a slight left turn and going more mineral based, but I think it's an absolute showstopper, which is something that I think, as you age, you want to have fragrances that are more signature, because you don't want to have a ton of fragrances unless you're an enthusiast. You just want to have some things that kind of well represent you and make you not smell like everybody else, as a 30, 40-year-old man. So this is another great one, Amir Celestial cloning Ganymede. It's almost scary how close it is to the original Ganymede. You have here floral, the older I get, I find the more interested in florals I am, like not floral dominant fragrances, but fragrances very much tinged by floral components. And so this is an example of an absolute showstopper fragrance, because they took something that would normally be youthful, which is kind of like this kind of floral, light, crisp airiness in mineral notes. So we've got minerally floral. It almost goes feminine, but then they sophisticate it by putting a note of suede, and that suede note just masculine. I almost said masculates. I don't even know if that's a word, but it almost just ramps up the manpower of this fragrance. But then it's showstopper because it's like floral, orange, mineral, ocean, like airy, crisp vibes, and then it's got just a backbone of suede. So that's, again, we talk about fragrances that can lean more young, but then a certain component of it that tapers it out and makes it ageless. That suede note is very robust and mature. A 30, 40-year-old would absolutely love a fragrance like this. And it's a showstopper because not a lot of people wear fragrances that have mineral suede component to them. Another one, I think, if you want to go more ultra male, but this isn't really quite in the DNA, but it is a sweet fragrance that I think is actually mature. This is kind of a cross between Tom Ford's Noir and Spice Bomb, maybe Spice Bomb Regular, or even Spice Bomb Infrared to an extent. This is Odyssey Homme Eau de Parfum by Armaf. This is a fragrance that I feel, takes that kind of almost holiday spice, but this does not have kind of the sweet cinnamony vibe, but it definitely has kind of a neutral sweetness, spiciness to it. But it is sweet, but it's lightly sweet because it's tinged by spice, and that spice note matures out the fragrance to where you can lean into 30s and 40s with a fragrance like this and smell ultra masculine and mature, but you could also lean into your 20s and go light because it's got this like holiday spicy kind of tinge, where on cold weather, a fragrance like this would really kind of be a showstopper for a younger guy, but it's not old smelling. Lastly, here's another suggestion. Something like Cedrat Essence by Amir, Paris Corner. This is Cedrat Boisé, which to me leans as like a 20, 30-year-old fragrance predominantly, but then they put a note of green melon. So I feel like Cedrat Boisé is like an older man's fragrance, but what makes it more youthful is the note of green melon. You don't really smell green melon in a lot of fragrances, or melon in general. So this is almost the opposite case, where it doesn't take a young DNA profile and sophisticate it. It's already a sophisticated profile cloning Cedrat Boisé, but then the fruit element makes it more playful and toned down. So now as a 30, 40-year-old guy wearing a fragrance like this, it's a more playful take on a formal type of DNA. So this will make you feel youthful and cool, but not youthful in a 20-year-old way. Youthful in a, if I'm 40 years old, I'm rocking this fragrance, you might feel like you're in your mid-30s type vibes, just because it's a little more playful. It's not super serious. It's got a backbone of seriousness and a front load of playfulness in that melon note. But again, that's what you want to look for as an older male in certain DNAs that are kind of like fresh, citrus, sweet, stuff like that. So again, back to the question of should you get Afnan's 9 p.m. I think for the price, it doesn't make any sense not to at least try it. You can always resell this fragrance, and the TikTok shop is just selling this for dirt cheap right now, under 20 bucks after shipping. And it is a great fragrance, guys. With that being said, just because a fragrance is great doesn't mean it's great on you. So the first question you got to ask, again, in summary, is, am I open to sweet fragrances? Do I have any sweet fragrances on my shelf, like really sweet fragrances? And am I open to sweet tropical vibes? The second question you got to ask is, have you smelled a Jean Paul Gaultier fragrance? Because it's a one-of-one tropical type of DNA that you need to at least get your nose on it to know if it is something for you. Thirdly, is price an issue for you? If it isn't, it's totally worth having. Even if you rarely use it because you don't like to be overly sweet, you will find a great occasion to smell this kind of smooth tropicalness. It's not insanely sweet, but it is very sweet, smooth sweet, musky a bit. Again, for 20 bucks or less, I would put this in my collection just to say I had it. And I personally will not wear this a lot. This will just be something circumstantially in cold weather. I might grab it and be super light on the trigger finger. But some men like smelling sweet. You know what I'm saying? So once you answer all those questions, the next question is, the last question is, what kind of fragrances do you have in your collection? When it comes to slightly sweet fragrances, do you have much? If you don't, just know that there's a lot of options available to you that I think are better than this if you're a guy in your 40s. You know, such as the fragrances that I listed below that I think more comfortably are certainly mature. Even though they have some youthful qualities to them, you still feel fully masculine in them a lot more than Afnan 9 p.m. But again, if price isn't an issue, this is an incredible fragrance to at least have around in the collection. You just might get it further down the line. Like I know for me, I didn't pull the trigger on this until my 100+ fragrance because I got the deal. I'm not going to pay 30, 40 bucks for Afnan 9 p.m. It has no use case with me. I'm in hot weather. I'm about to be 36 years old. I don't want to smell overly sweet, and I definitely don't want to smell overly sweet in hot weather. Price came down. I smelled it. I appreciate it. I'm going to save it for a cold day. Really assess where you're at with your situation. I think 20% of the time, a guy in his 40s could rock this, 20% of 40-year-olds would really rock with a fragrance like this. Most of you need to probably say no to a fragrance like this and go to one of the alternatives I showed below. If you want to hear more alternatives, let me go ahead and look back at the camera here. We got tons of fragrances down here, guys. I mean, and this isn't even all of it. I've got boxes of fragrance. So we certainly have, now I'm shaking the camera. 1 second. we certainly have a lot of fragrances that we can show you guys as alternatives and whatnot. You guys know I'm long-winded. That's just the name of the game, man. I try to give you guys as much information as I have, because these are the type of things I was thinking through when I was building my collection, and I didn't have the note profiles quickly available. And as you guys know, in this little orange box back here, I probably got like 50, 60 samples. And so I'm big on making sure you have your nose on profiles so that you know kind of what you're getting into with a fragrance, so that you can not blind buy as much as possible. I've said it a million times. I don't think you should ever be in a situation where you need to blind buy. You should always have such an educated nose and educated set of information across the internet that you should be pretty confident in any purchase that you get. Anyways, let me know in the comments. This will probably be the only video that doesn't have like an amazing thumbnail, but anytime someone asks a great question, I'm gonna do an impromptu kind of live video and upload it because I think it'll be helpful for you guys, and I hope you guys benefit from it. Let me know in the comments if you like when I do videos like this where we respond to viewer comments and if it's helpful for you. This is the Scent Bubble. Appreciate y'all for rocking with me. Have a blessed day. Peace.